Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Icy Topic Chats for today. Hey, it's Pi Day. Happy Pi Day. How are you celebrating Pi Day? We're eating pizza. We're going to eat pie, literally pie. I'm going to go out for a ruck, which is walking with weight on my back later today, and I'm going to do GPS art. I'm going to start my Garmin watch, and I'm going to go and do the pie symbol in the streets in Edwardsville, Illinois, where I am located. But that's not what we're here today to talk about. We're going to talk about getting paid. Becky, Garrow, and I both have lots of opinions about this. I gave this presentation by myself last year, but then just knowing Becky and hearing her over the years that she's been involved with us here with the chats, I realized she'd be a wonderful resource for this as well. So I invited her to join me. So I'm going to give my presentation first, and then I'm going to pass it off to her. Hopefully we can figure out the remote control function, and I will allow that to her. And let's see, I'm going to do that right now just so I have done it. All right, there we go. Anyhow, we'll stop the recording and I'll say goodbye to all the YouTube people, and then we're going to open it up for what we're calling like a Dear Abby or a Dear Becky and Matt session. And I've got a couple questions that I would ask anybody, and I'm actually currently working with or have recently figured out, and it's stumped me. And then we'll also open it up for anybody else who wants to Dear Becky and Matt us and ask your hard question and see if we can work as a group to kind of answer those questions. But anyway, this is getting paid, and hopefully you don't tomorrow invoice tomorrow. The idea is that you don't wait to do that. So let's talk a little bit about what this is like. So I always dedicate this session to my father, who passed away 3 years ago. He inspired me to start my consulting firm. I saw him do it. He was in the oil and gas industry. He was a CPA, and he would ask me the question, your most important skill is, and he asked this to me all the time. It was almost a little annoying because I knew it was coming. It's kind of a redundant kind of guy. And I would say things like really great skills or client connections or excellent work product. And of course, he would say accounts receivable because he is, after all, a CPA. And that is actually true, because at some point you have to ask yourself the question, are you running a hobby or are you running a business? Because a hobby is for fun and you don't really care about making any money. But if you're running a business, you need to be thinking about how you make it all happen. And one of those most important things is infusion of cash so that you can pay yourself, so that you can continue doing this for more than a month. You need to keep doing this sort of thing. And a lot of us find out the hard way, or this may be the thing that scares a lot of us away. But anyway, this is what you need to figure out how to do. And once you figure it out, it actually becomes kind of second nature, and it becomes a sort of, I wouldn't necessarily say it's always easy, but it's something you just like build into who you are and how you operate. And then you create a system, and then you get paid on a regular basis. And a lot of things become a lot more simple with the way that you operate. At least it is for me. So I want to give a little bit of a situational identification, basically tell you who we are. What is Goshen Education Consulting? We're now Goshen Consulting. We used to be Goshen Education Consulting. So we are a small consulting firm. We're focused on education and community-based externally funded projects. We're primarily doing work in Southwestern Illinois and St. Louis. We work very hard to get contracts that are from a reliable funding source, which is important to us because, and that for us is the federal government. Overwhelmingly, probably 95% of our funds are originating from the federal government. So every time they start to talk about a government shutdown, I start to sweat because I want to get paid, but the thing that we also do that's kind of critical to our projects is we sign contracts for usually 3 to 5 years, and that provides account receivable reliability. We have reliability and revenue, and that's an important thing for us too. It gives me a lot of the ability to sleep at night, and frankly, I know a lot of you guys don't do things like that, but for us, because we have 3 to 5 years, I don't think I would have ever started a project. I started my consulting firm if I didn't know I would have revenue coming in for multiple years. And that's when I first initiated it. That was how I did it. And that's how I convinced my wife that it was the right thing for us to do and for me to take this leap of faith. Most of our projects are somewhere Well, our contracts range from about $4,000 a year to $270,000 a year. I wish most of them were on the higher end. They're not. I would say the median contract per year is probably between 18 and 22,000. If I had to just guess, I didn't sit down and actually look at that, my contracts and do that, but that would be about a guess. That's where I want them to be. I'd actually like them to be higher at some point. But anyway, that's a good sense for what we do. We typically invoice quarterly for a lot of our things. Becky's going to tell you a different story on how to do that, but that's what we do. We invoice quarterly. So that would be usually January, April, July, and September. And so that's the beginning of the quarter for a lot of our organizations, which are usually school districts or universities, a lot of them, and they operate on quarters, and that makes a lot of sense for them. All right, so when you're thinking about how to get paid, the first thing you need to do from the very beginning is just start with being professional. What does that mean? You need a consistent approach to how you operate generally with your clients, but definitely in the way that you operate with them contractually and with the way that you invoice them. You need to be predictable. One of the consistency things that I do is we show up early on when they're writing their grants. We try to get involved when they're just starting to say, should we have an evaluator or not? And when they think maybe they want us, I show up very prepared to talk to them about what they need to be thinking about with this program, because usually we've worked on those types of programs before. A lot of repeat types of programs from the Department of Defense or from the National Science Foundation, and we know how those operate. I want to be there, and I want to show up for their meetings in the early days, because I want them to know that that's how we operate. We operate in a supportive, friendly, but professional atmosphere. And we also initiate by starting an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. It's not a contract, it's a pseudo contract, but it is an agreement that people sign so that they understand we are professional, we are going to show up, here's the things we're going to do for you. Usually they're writing a proposal that may or may not get funded, but they're looking for a pro bono program for their program evaluation, and we will provide that to them for free with the expectation that they would give us a contract upon receipt of their approved proposal. But we do that, and that shows them that, hey, we are here we mean business, and we're going to be very professional about what we're doing. If you follow through on your word, that's fidelity to your process. You're going to demonstrate that you're professional. So follow through on what you say in your MOU. And so you're building trust. When you get to that contract, make sure you include an invoice schedule. This is a predictable thing that you can always point back to, where I'm going to invoice you on January 1st, 2025. I'm going to invoice you on April 1st, 2025 for this amount. So if we had a $20,000 a year contract, it would be $5,000 on April 1st. It's going to be $5,000 on July 1st. It's all in there. We sign the contract. It's all said and done. So when I send that invoice, there should be zero questions about why they're receiving that invoice. I include a late payment penalty in the contract. I have never enforced one, but I have threatened a lot. But I don't really want to penalize anybody. And usually when people aren't paying, my experience is it might be negligence, but it's not, nobody's being, they're just mostly inept or negligent. They're not usually doing it to be kind of jerks or something. I do make sure there's a termination clause in all of my contracts. So classic example, this just happened yesterday. I got a contract from a university, and it outlined how they can terminate a contract with me. I turned it back to them and said, this is great, but I'd like to revise your language to give myself afford myself the same opportunity to terminate this contract with you as you did with me. And I think contracts are not one way. They're two-way instruments, right? They're meant for us to create communication between two parties. So it's not I think it's just rude for you to create a termination clause that only benefits yourself. So I always insist on having a termination clause for the very reason that maybe this is just a headache, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this situation? And are they going to sue me if I leave? I need some way to know that I can get out of a contract if things go really wrong. Next, make sure you're invoicing on your schedule. If you say you're going to invoice on April 1st, duh, invoice on April 1st. Make sure your invoices are going out within the first week of the month. Try and do it on the first or the first working day of the month. But if you don't, then you're already creating kind of this anti-professionalism. You're not showing that you're following through with fidelity to what you said you were going to do. Make sure you're doing that. Plus, you want to get paid. Make sure you have a period update report along with the invoice. Not all of our staff do this, but I think it's a good process. Basically, you're sending just a couple paragraphs or maybe a page report. Some people actually have it built into their deliverables that they're doing a quarterly report. Make sure you're doing that. That gives them something to say, oh, look, I got something for my money. Because sometimes nothing really happens during our periods. Our January through April, the first 3 months of the year are kind of quiet for a lot of our university-based projects that are really, really busy the rest of the year. This is the quiet period that we're in the middle of right now. But it is nice for them to know, hey, these are the things that we've done this period, and here's the things that are coming up, particularly if this is a really quiet period, you can point to what's about to happen. And you're spreading the money out over time. Bob, I will share an MOU, sample MOU. I have a couple of them for you. And I'm not following the chat too well, so if you've got questions, let me know. All right, so here's an important thing, and this I spent the morning doing this actually, just ironically, it was not planned. Know your client's accounts payable process. You're going to find, particularly in your larger organizations, the people you're working with don't understand how their administration works. They don't want to. They're there to do whatever there is to do there. Like for us, university professors, they want to be university professors. They don't want to understand how accounts get paid. There's oftentimes in a university situation, there are a couple people. There's usually like an office manager or administrative assistant or administrative clerk or something within that academic department or within that college that knows what's going on. And there's usually somebody in an accounts payable office. So I was working with Tina today from SIU Carbondale. Tina's very pleasant. She has been working at SIU Carbondale for over 20 years. She left whatever she was doing before because she had a baby and she wanted a secure job. And I'm sure she's in the basement of a building without windows, and she's been doing this, and I'm sure she has some wonderful hobbies, and I think she has grandchildren at this point. Anyway, get to know your accounts payable people and their process, because there's oftentimes an excessive approval process. Oftentimes you need like a purchase order, and that you can't invoice until you get the purchase order. And that purchase order needs to be placed on the invoice. And it's just, oftentimes I know what my people need to do before they even do. And I have to coach them through this, because frankly, we get months and months into these projects and they want me to get the work done, but hey, come on, seriously, I need to get paid. So I became friend with Tina. And I also recognize with these large organizations, my first payment may be slow and may be very slow. And I often use the reference of a clogged pipe, because in many ways, I know this money wants to come to me. I just got to find a way to identify and release that pipe, the clog in the pipe. When we get to the point where people aren't paying, we have a kind of internal process of playing good cop and bad cop. You can see it. Our office manager, MJ, is here, Emily Johnson, and she's my good cop, and I get to play bad cop. But this provides us a chance to talk with folks. So Emily, so we actually, if we send out an invoice, and we've done some of this recently, January 1st, we send out a slew of invoices. On the first week of February, Emily follows up. She's the good cop. And then after 2 months, I'll escalate. And it comes to me and I'll start to ask questions, and pretty much I'm more of a good cop than a bad cop, but I start to say things that are not necessarily pleasant. And then we do stop work after 90 days. Generally, there's always exceptions. And I've got lots and lots of exceptions, but I also understand kind of the bigger atmosphere of what's going on. We have one project that started in June, actually July, and we haven't gotten paid for it, but I know it's going to happen real soon. I'm not very patient with that one though. Yeah, stop work, particularly if they have something due to their funder, and they really ought to have figured it out by now. So there's Emily, there's me. So here's my 5.5 invoicing ideas before I pass it off to my colleague, Becky. Remember to remain professional at all times. Start with your contract. Make sure you're working on a payment schedule. Include that in the contract, okay? Know your client, understand their organization, not just the people that you're working directly with, understand their general organization. And the more you can understand that, the better you can understand what they need to be doing and help them through their process. Again, be consistent, professional with your follow-up, but follow through on your contract penalties. If you say you're going to do something, make sure you're doing it. All right. I think this is where we go on to Becky. This is you, right?
Yeah, thank you. I don't have screen control. Can you switch the screen? Yep, there we go. Now I
You
have
got
it.
it? Great.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Following up on Matt's invoicing ideas with my invoicing ideas. I actually bill monthly, and I am really consistent with this. This is so that if there is a problem, I identify that problem quickly. Matt's firm is bigger than mine. I'm not going to wait 90 days to follow up on these invoices. I do that immediately, right? So the monthly invoices is we're going to have a problem paying. I can identify that before I get too far into the scope of work. So that's a protection I take for me. I invoice by activities or partially complete deliverables whenever I can. So this means I don't wait until I've completed all 4 focus groups. If 2 of them happened in February and 2 are happening in March, if this is a new client or a client that's getting a little squirrely, I'll invoice for conducting 2 of those. So a partial activity, right? To ensure that we're at least getting some funds. Again, if we're going to have problems that we don't continue with some of these focus groups, if we feel like we're not going to get paid. I always blame the contract, not the person. And this is actually good advice for any sort of like document review or anything. I don't say, you aren't paying me on time. You don't care about invoicing or, responding to our invoices. I say, hey, the contract says when we complete these deliverables, we'll have these invoices fulfilled within 30 days. Can you provide us the status on that? I want to make sure I'm adhering to the contract. Do we need to change the contract, right? So if you get a late invoice, right? Or if your invoice is not, I have sort of a little tier. So I do a green, I just send a reminder, right? I include documentation. Hey, sent this invoice 30 days ago. Want to check on the status. We go yellow. I give a second reminder. I include the contract payment schedule and the contract if I need to. And I will also mention the consequences of non-payment, which will be red. Do not pass go. I stop work. I stop submitting deliverables, right? We don't give them the products that they're requesting if they're not paying for previous products that we've completed for them. So how do you go? Do you wait 30 days? Do you wait 60 days? Do you wait 90 days? Oh, he's back. Only you can decide, right? How you are going to follow up with your invoices. You have the relationships with your clients, right? A new client versus a long-term, steady, dependable client, you're going to decide on whether to deploy these strategies and the frequency at which to deploy them, right? But I definitely wouldn't go too long before getting paid. Okay, let me close this chat. Your risk tolerance. What is your risk tolerance for not getting paid, right? You need to identify this. And can I give you advice on how to identify your risk tolerance? No, because once again, only you can identify what your risk tolerance is, right? If you are new, if you are a veteran, again, if it's a new client or a long-term steady client, can your firm can you as an independent consultant or can your firm spend the time it requires to follow up with clients? Some clients, one green reminder, oops, whoops, sorry, this got lost. We'll pay you right now, right? But to be constantly following up with people is time consuming. That's time you're not getting paid for. Do you have money? Are you okay if someone doesn't pay you for work you've done 6 months ago? Can you float that? Can you float it for every client or only some of your clients, right? So this is something you're going to need to identify with your clients. What's your risk tolerance? These are sentences that I have actually used to follow up on late invoices. I really wanted to go back and like chat GPT these or something and clean up the grammar, but I didn't. I'm giving you my honest sentences. I literally copied and pasted these from emails I've sent in the past couple of years, one as recently as December. And I do want to say these were the complete emails. I would include the documentation below, but one was green. Hey, I'm prepared to send the final invoice immediately upon fulfillment of our June, July, and August invoices. Thanks! Exclamation mark. We're all so happy, right? A yellow sentence I used. At the moment, we are required to prioritize work from clients with whom we have active executed contracts, right? So works ends, they want additional deliverables or additional work or additional review. We'll get the contract in place. You can invoice later. You can invoice without a contract. I'm not doing that. I am prioritizing the work that I have with clients who have decided to contract with me to make this a solid relationship, right? And red, we are pausing work on this project. Please let us know when your organization's accounts payable issues have been resolved. The ball is in their court, right? Let's see. Matt, oh, there it is. Sometimes I lose control. Other sentences I've heavily used, this is like red on fire. So understanding their concern, and this is the one I did in December, right? So I had a client, they were 2 months late with two previous invoices. The final invoice was going to be delivered upon the final product, but of the 4 invoices that were a part of our contract payment schedule, they hadn't done it yet. I attached the contract, I cited the payment schedule, and again, on that bottom, let us know how you would like to proceed. The ball's in their court. They are the ones violating the contract payment terms, not us, right? And I also want to put, this isn't even green. This is like pre-green, right? I had a client who emailed me and said, I am so sorry. And this was a small business. I've had a relationship with these people for years. We're dealing with payment issues, from the county. They are 3 months late on their contract because they're getting the funding from the state, which is 6 months late on their et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sort of this trickle down effect. I knew they'd pay me, right? My risk tolerance with this was really high. I didn't need this cash for my business at the moment. It was okay if they were 2, 3, 6 months late. I love working with client. All good. I know they pay me. Here's the final report. I trust that this is going to get done, right? You may not have this risk tolerance, right? This was something for me that I made with this client, but I've used this language too. So the number of times that sorry was used in all of those emails that I sent to my clients following up on those invoices that were unfulfilled was 0. I do not believe in apologizing for things that are part of contractual obligations. I think this gets messy, right? I don't say sorry. We have provided a service or a deliverable. We expect the compensation that we agreed upon in the contract for that deliverable. So consequences I experienced by using those sentences. Some of y'all are thinking like, wow, do you have any clients left? No, I have plenty of clients left. We got paid quickly. What a miracle. When you're not providing a final report that they need to submit to their funder, they really prioritize getting your invoices paid, right? Every single client except for one has become a repeat client. And that one client who didn't become a repeat client, that was because that was a breakup that I was not going to make up. I was like, I'm sorry, we're at capacity. We can no longer take on your work. They required too much of my time to be following up to get those invoices paid. I also felt and I acted like my time and my work were worthy of respect. These are not unreasonable demands. I would never go up and order something at a restaurant and say, you know what, I'll decide if I'm going to pay you later. Can you send me something else? No, this is part of the contract, right? General tips, it starts with you. So this means being a top performer. I would really recommend providing your clients with good work. They will prioritize paying you, right? Provide clear, consistent, accurate invoices. As Matt said, he does quarterly, I did monthly. Just make sure that these are consistent and that they are accurate. Don't have problems with your invoices. Make it so that clients want to keep your services. You can do that by doing these 2 things, by providing excellent work, timely invoices, clear communication, and have a policy, right? This is maybe good dating advice too, but only work with clients who respect you and pay you. If you have clients who do not respect you and do not pay you, that is not a client that's worth your time, right? There are many other clients that are really going to value the services that you're giving. It also starts with your contract. Matt talked about this. Have really clear payment terms. When somebody sends you a contract, feel free to send it back and modify the language if it doesn't meet your needs. All contracts are negotiable. And again, having clear, direct, concise communication. We do not need lengthy explanations for why invoices need to get paid on time, right? So I'm going to do a small diversion into communication. So there's passive communication, aggressive communication. Oh Lord, the passive aggressive communication, and then assertive, right? So passive communication is when we are not expressing our needs or our wants, right? Aggressive communication, and here's some of you are not going to be surprised about this, where I tend to fall sometimes inappropriately, unwilling to compromise, easily frustrated, being demeaning or being disrespectful, right? Getting really impatient with folks. Passive aggressive communication, the worst of both worlds. But this is usually when we're denying there's a problem, but then we're upset about it. We're talking about it. We're also, again, spending a lot of our time and energy not addressing the problem. We all want to transition as much as we can to assertive communication. Clearly state your needs and wants, provide timely communication, right? And communicating in a confident manner. So again, um, I really believe that transitioning towards assertive communication can be a strategy to help you get paid, especially when you're doing this follow-up documentation with some of your invoices. So remember, it starts with you, be a top performer, clear payment terms, invoice on time, have accurate invoices, and have clear, direct, concise communication if you are not getting paid with clients. And don't be afraid to dump them, right? Don't be afraid to execute that contract clause saying, you know what, we're not getting paid. We're going to have to stop work and end this contract. Let us know if you'd like a referral to someone else.
Okay, so lots of good comments in the chat. We'll get to a lot of those questions in just a minute. I want to point out that Eva Ringstrom is ready to join your podcast that you're going to start someday, Becky, on business communication. And I think I would subscribe to that as well. I think that would be wonderful. Joel's subscribed as well. I want to point out some of the upcoming sessions next week. We're going to have scale and implementation with Mary Frances Porter. In 2 weeks, Sherilyn Corsack, Jillian Marshall, and I believe a third person, but I'm not sure who is going to be joining. We're going to do a panel on new consulting practices. And this is what it's like to, hey, go from zero to you have a consulting practice. And it'll be, both Sherilyn and Jillian, and I believe the other individual has been in business for about a year or maybe a year and a half or 2 years, but really early on in their career. So I think that's a must go to for all of us, even of us who's been around for a while, because it's important to understand those things. I am currently reading the Strategic Doing book. I was listening to it as I was rocking yesterday. Sarah Williams Lang will be here. And then a big topic that we always get excited about, which is pricing your service. April 11th. You'll see I'll do a firm session on the 18th, and then we'll go into the networking rabbit trail with MJ Pattison. A lot of those people are here, so if you're curious about what the sessions will be like, feel free to private message them. Before we go on to the next thing, I have Emily Johnson here. Emily, did you want to share any of the things because she is our accounts person as our office manager, did you want to share anything that you thought we talked about that made sense, that didn't make sense, that you would revise or edit, or that you really liked? Or do you just want to say hi?
Hi. No, I thought that was really great. And I liked definitely the assertive communication that Becky shared, not being passive aggressive, not being aggressive, not being passive, but being assertive, but also like being nice too. I find like goes a long way. So just like, like I typically put like, have a great weekend or something in my follow-up emails, like, hey, just want to get an update on the status of this. Can you let me know if there's anything else you need from us? So that's kind of sort of the follow-up that I do. So hopefully that's helpful to you guys. But yeah, I would agree with everything that Matt and Becky said. And I'm also available to answer questions as well.
Okay, fantastic. So everybody in YouTube land, we'll see you next week. Everybody here live, stick around.